individuals, be careful. Pride goes before what? Destruction or a fall. This is where we get in trouble. Now in Luke, go to Luke, Matthew, Mark, Luke, go to 12. Luke 12, verse 1. Another warning. It says, Luke 12, verse 1, under these circumstances, after so many thousands of the multitude had gathered together, they were stepping on one another. Luke 12, verse 1. He began saying to his disciples, first of all, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees, and here he defines it, which is hypocrisy. Greek word, hypokritas, it means to be an actor. Let me clarify something right out front. God knows that we are all weak as Christians. He knows that we have two natures that we battle. God is never shocked that we're battling our flesh. The world, the flesh, and the devil. So, as a Christian, we shouldn't be surprised when we wrestle with these kinds of things. But what God will not approve of is a phony, an actor. Literally, hypokritas is the Greek word for an actor in a drama who would put on a mask. As part of a drama, he would change masks. That's what Jesus had the most severe words for, was people who were acting. Now we can all say that there are times when we can be a little bit hypocritical. But what we don't want to be is in the category of hypocrites. We don't want to be people who are going through religious motions just for a show, just to please man. Not for the wrong reasons. Notice what he says. He says, verse 2, Luke 12, but there is nothing covered up that will not be revealed, and hidden that will not be known. Accordingly, whatever you have said in the dark shall be heard in the light. What you have whispered in the inner room shall be proclaimed upon the housetop. Simply put, Jesus is saying, God knows. God knows when a minister is ripping off people and in the back rooms laughing about it and saying, I put one over on those people. God knows. And Jesus is giving a warning. And later he is going to say in our text, these people will receive the stricter judgment. This is a dangerous game to play. And it's being played all over the world by wolves in sheep's clothing. In Luke 12, verse 15, Jesus gives one more beware. He said to them, Luke 12:15, beware and be on your guard against every form of greed. For not even when one has an abundance does his life consist of his possessions. Now, have you ever been there on a Christmas morning or maybe a birthday party, back to Luke 20 if you would? You know, maybe you've said this before. Okay, honey, this year we're not going to overdo it at Christmas time. Do you guys say this? We're only going to do this, right? We're going to limit what we do. Then you look under the tree and it looks like gifts have multiplied under your Christmas tree. You're like, where did all these gifts come from? And sometimes you buy the gift, you know, for the little kid in the family, and everybody wants to bless and spoil the little kid. By the time they get to the 6th or 7th present, all meaning has been lost. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It's like there's an empty feeling to just making it about possessions. Paul, in quoting Jesus in Acts 20, said, the Lord himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Now I looked up the Hebrew word for blessed. And in the Hebrew word picture language, blessed literally means fire on the head. You might think, what? Fire on the head. And it can be used in the sense of the presence of God. Think of Acts 2, the day of Pentecost, when the tongues of fire appeared. And it can also mean going through the fire of life. But either way, think of the image. We are blessed when we give. It's like the special presence of God comes down and strengthens and blesses in our life. Have you ever noticed, you live your life for a while and maybe you bought into the pattern of the world and then you end up giving and you give something and you see what it does in someone's life. And that's the time that you feel the most blessed. Is when you actually gave something away. That is the spirit, the true spirit of Christmas. That's what it's about. So Jesus gives the warning, and he says about these guys who were the opposite of what they should have been. He says, beware, Luke 20, verse 46, of the scribes. who liked to walk around in long robes. And I shared with you last week, they wore a long white robe. It identified them easily. Unless you were a tradesman busy at work, you had to acknowledge them. It had to be something like this, Rabbi or Father. Or they even appreciated you calling them Master. There's an ancient story about two scribes that are walking through the marketplace, and they come back grieved because all the people said to them was, peace to you. They didn't actually call them Master or Father or Teacher. They didn't like the disrespect. See, their whole lives were dependent upon how people perceived them. And that's where they went wrong. And that's where we can go wrong. We can begin to measure our Christian lives by what other people think of us. And that's the wrong measurement. Of course, trusted people is one thing, but you know what I'm saying. So here's what they do. He says, beware of them. They wear the long robes. They like to be identified with their cool clothing. They love respectful greetings, 46, in the marketplaces, and chief seats in the synagogues. Don't you dare put me in the second row. They usually were, they were up front, visible, and places of honor at banquets. And when Jesus saw and heard that his own disciples were arguing about who was going to be the greatest, he would correct them. He said, I have come to be what? A servant of all. If I, your master, washed your feet, you should do the same to one another. He was warning them, and he was modeling the faith. He was saying, look, I've come to serve, and I'm God. So how should you measure your life then? It's not about the best seats. It's not about the greetings. But even worse, and two words jumped out at me in verse 46. They like to walk around in long robes, and they love respectful greetings. And you can tell a lot by what someone likes and loves. What they eat up in their lives. What really makes them tick. Right? And Jesus says, worse yet, they devour widows' houses. See that word devour? That's a powerful word. They devour widows. Now God has a heart for widows and orphans, and the scribes would often come in when a husband died and a wife was left with very little options to make money. And rather than helping her, you know what they would do? Under the pretense of helping, they would rip her off. They would devour her household. They would sweep in a time when a widow was highly vulnerable, and rather than taking care of her, they would steal away her land, steal away her retirement or anything she had left, and do it in the name of God. Kind of slyly say, if you give, there's a blessing that's going to come back to you. And we see this. People make these promises about blessings, and then the only ones you see being blessed materially is them. They're driving around in the cool cars, and they'll say, maybe you don't have enough faith. That's why you don't have one of these and I'm driving. No, actually you're a shyster. And you're ripping off people in the name of God. And Jesus says, they devour widows' houses, and for appearance sake, the NIV says for show, the ESV says for a pretense, they offer long prayers. And Jesus, concluding chapter 20, says, these guys will receive greater condemnation. Wow. God takes this very seriously. See, they make long prayers, but there's no depth. You kind of get the idea that they got their arm around the widow and they're praying for her while they're reaching into her purse. And Jesus was not happy about it. And he said, look, there is a day of judgment coming when these type of individuals will receive, look at these words, 47, the greater condemnation. See, this is serious business. See, they are hearers of the word, but they're not doers of the word. And pure and undefiled religion, James 1:27, in the sight of our God and Father, is to do what? To help widows and orphans in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. And so, one of the hearts of God you can find in Isaiah 1 and all over the scriptures is to defend the orphan and widow. Right now we have an epidemic in Riverside County. You know what it is? Right now we have all these kids in foster care There's foster parents. There's some really great foster parents, but some foster parents, for money, take these kids in. And when they're 18, the support from the government stops. These kids are in the middle of their senior year, some of them, in high school, and are kicked out of their foster care home to fend for themselves. Now, here's an open door. Maybe some of you would pray about what we can do. Because they are going into prostitution, drug abuse, and crime because their foster parents asked them to leave because the funds have run out. What do you think our God in heaven thinks of that? Do you think that He's going to applaud that kind of religion? Do you think that He's going to applaud that kind of distant, calloused heart that once the money runs out and there's nothing left in it for me, then see you later? See, that, I think you can feel just from that parallel example how Jesus felt and why He said the hard words He said. And so Luke 21:1, as we transition, we'll only go to the 4th verse, says He looked up. Do you get the idea that He was looking down after He said this thing? These will receive the greater condemnation. Maybe He just looked down, thinking of all of the debates